On the morning of February 14, 2000, the Degree household in Shelby, North Carolina, awoke to a quiet that felt off. It was a school day, and 9-year-old Asha Degree was nowhere to be found. Her bed was empty, the door was unlocked, and despite a violent storm during the night, her disappearance had made no sound. Asha lived with her parents, Harold and Aquila Degree, and her older brother O'Brien. The family was close-knit, protective, and deeply rooted in structure and discipline. Both parents worked hard to keep their children focused on school, church, and sports. Asha herself was a shy, studious fourth grader. She played basketball and loved reading. She didn't have behavioral issues. Her family was not in crisis. In the words of her mother, she was happy. The Degree children had gone to bed around 8 p.m. the night before. The area was being pounded by wind and rain, remnants of a strong storm system with lightning and power outages throughout the region. Around 9 p.m., a car accident nearby knocked out the electricity in the neighborhood. The power returned shortly after midnight. Between 12:30 and 2:30 a.m., Asha's father, Harold, returned home from his late shift and checked on the kids. Both were asleep in their shared room. Nothing seemed unusual. Then, at 5:45 a.m., Aquila got up to wake them for school. O'Brien was in bed. Asha was gone. At first, there was confusion. Maybe she had gone to her grandmother's house across the street. Maybe she had gotten up early for some reason. But within minutes, reality set in. Asha hadn't gone to the bathroom. Her shoes, backpack, and personal items were missing. The front door was unlocked. No one had heard a sound. By 6:40 a.m., Aquila called the police. What followed was a community-wide panic. This wasn't just a missing child. It was a missing child who had vanished during a violent storm, with no sign of forced entry and no clear reason to leave. Police immediately began canvassing the area. Asha's family, friends, and neighbors launched their own search. Dogs were brought in. Helicopters flew overhead. But by sunset, there were no leads. Then, something strange surfaced. Several motorists who had been traveling along Highway 18 in the early morning hours came forward. They claimed to have seen a young girl walking alone around 4 a.m. She was wearing a white shirt and light-colored pants, and she was carrying something like a book bag. One witness said they turned around to check on her. But when they approached, the girl ran off the road and into the woods. These were not imagined sightings. The descriptions matched Asha's appearance, and the timeline fit the window between when her father last saw her asleep and when her mother discovered her missing. Search teams zeroed in on that section of Highway 18, especially near a local tool shed just off the road. There, they found what appeared to be Asha's candy wrappers, a pencil, and other small items believed to be hers. But after that, nothing. The woods were dense. Rain had washed away any footprints. She had vanished again. From the beginning, investigators struggled to make sense of what happened. Asha had no known internet access. There was no phone in her room. There were no signs of online grooming, no suspicious adults contacting her, and no behavioral shifts in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. Even the idea that she had run away voluntarily seemed hard to believe. She was 9 years old. It was the middle of the night. It was storming, and she was afraid of dogs, the dark, and thunderstorms. Nothing about her personality or background suggested a child plotting a solo escape. And yet, she had packed a few belongings, taken her school book bag, and walked nearly a mile from her home into the unknown. The Degree family was blindsided. As they searched the woods and answered media questions, they were adamant that Asha didn't leave because she was unhappy. Her mother put it simply, "My daughter didn't run away. Someone knew how to get to her." The first 48 hours passed. Then a week. Then 2. No confirmed sightings, no calls, no ransom note. Just silence. It was as if the storm had swallowed her whole. In the next section, we'll explore the most baffling clue of the entire case: Asha's backpack, found buried nearly 18 months later, 26 miles away, wrapped in plastic and containing items that didn't belong to her. 17 months after Asha Degree vanished from her home in Shelby, North Carolina, a discovery was made nearly 30 miles away that reignited the investigation and raised even more disturbing questions. In August 2001, construction workers were preparing a new site off Highway 18 in Burke County, near the town of Morganton. While clearing brush and leveling the land, one of them noticed a strange object buried in the dirt. It was a plastic trash bag, and inside that bag was another trash bag. Inside that second layer was a worn and dusty book bag. It was zippered shut, and once opened, it was immediately clear this was no ordinary school backpack. The name on the contents, written on books, papers, and clothing, belonged to Asha Degree. The location of the find stunned investigators. It was nearly 26 miles north of where Asha had last been seen. She was 9 years old and on foot. There were no bus lines, no train stations, no reason, logical or otherwise, that Asha could have walked or even been coaxed to that location on her own. The backpack had been buried deliberately, wrapped twice in black plastic to protect it from the elements. It was not just thrown away or left behind. Someone had taken the time to hide it and possibly hoped it would never be found. Inside the book bag, investigators found some of Asha's personal belongings, including school papers, a pencil, and a change of clothes. But 2 items inside the bag didn't belong to her and have never been explained. The first was a New Kids on the Block t-shirt. It was child-sized, but neither her parents nor her teachers recognized it as something Asha owned. She wasn't known to be a fan of the band. The second was a copy of McElligot's Pool by Dr. Seuss. It had been checked out from the library at Asha's elementary school, but again, records showed it wasn't checked out under her name. To this day, no one knows how these 2 items ended up in her bag. The discovery deepened the mystery in every direction. If Asha had been abducted, why would the person keep her belongings for over a year and then bury them? Why not destroy them, discard them, or leave them elsewhere? And why that location? Morganton is not a place Asha had any known connection to. The land itself was private property, heavily wooded and rural. The trash bag suggested someone had specifically chosen that spot for concealment. It wasn't thrown off the side of a road. It was placed underground. The location, too, offered no helpful surveillance or eyewitnesses. The find was lucky, pure chance. If construction hadn't started there, the backpack might never have been uncovered. The FBI and local authorities descended on the scene. Forensic testing was done on the book bag and its contents. But by that time, much of the evidence had degraded. Rain, heat, and time had worn away any fingerprints, DNA, or fiber evidence that could have pointed to a suspect. Still, the significance of the find couldn't be ignored. It confirmed one critical thing. Asha had not simply run away and vanished into the woods outside Shelby. She had been transported, likely by someone else, miles away from her home. Investigators re-interviewed neighbors, family, and classmates. They revisited timelines. They searched the area around the construction site for more evidence. Nothing further was found. Even the contents of the bag raised unsettling theories. Was someone trying to confuse investigators by planting unfamiliar items inside? Or had Asha been given these things by someone she trusted? Was the book from the library a coincidence? Or did her abductor know her school routines? With few hard answers, the case returned to a frustrating standoff. A child had walked out of her home into a storm, disappeared, and somehow ended up connected to a remote wooded site 26 miles away. Her belongings sealed and hidden, her fate unknown. For Asha's parents, the discovery only deepened the ache. Her mother, Ikila, told reporters, "If she's dead, just tell me, but I have to know." The book bag wasn't closure. It was a signal. Asha had gone somewhere. She had been taken or helped. And someone, somewhere, knew the full story. In the next section, We'll look at how the case stayed alive for over 2 decades, thanks to the tireless work of Asha's family, a few committed investigators, and the haunting power of an unanswered mystery. After the discovery of Asha Degree's backpack in August 2001, the case remained very much alive, but painfully stagnant. The bag had confirmed what her family feared most. Asha hadn't simply run away. Someone had taken her, and whoever that person was had buried part of her story nearly 30 miles from home. But despite renewed media attention and a flurry of investigative efforts, no new evidence surfaced. As weeks turned to months and months into years, the trail went cold. The lack of leads was crushing for investigators and especially for Asha's parents, who refused to give up. A family that wouldn't let go, Harold and Aquila Degree became the unwavering public face of their daughter's case. They gave interviews year after year. They stood in front of cameras with age-progressed photos of Asha. They continued to speak her name at every opportunity. Aquila often repeated, "Somebody knows something. Somebody saw something. Please come forward." They turned their grief into action. Every year, on Valentine A.S. Day, the anniversary of Asha's disappearance, the Degree family organized a walk called the Walk for Asha. Starting at their home and ending at a billboard bearing her image, the walk served 2 purposes: to keep Asha in the public eye and to keep the community reminded that this wasn't just an old case, it was an unsolved one. The event grew over the years, drawing volunteers, media outlets, and people who didn't even know the Degrees personally, but who had been moved by their story. Keeping the case alive behind the scenes, the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office and the FBI kept the case open and active. Every few years, small efforts were made to revisit old tips, retrace Asha's possible path, and apply new forensic technologies to the limited evidence they had. The FBI eventually added Asha Degree's case to their VICAP database, Violent Criminal Apprehension Program, which tracks unsolved violent crimes and missing persons cases across jurisdictions in hopes of identifying patterns or connections. In 2015, the FBI announced that they were reopening the case with a renewed push, offering a $25,000 reward for information leading to an arrest. A new tip came in around this time. A person claimed to have seen a young girl getting into a green car, possibly an early 1970s model Ford Thunderbird or AMC Rambler, on the morning Asha disappeared. The description matched older tips, but hadn't been publicized widely before. The tipster reported that the girl appeared hesitant, possibly coerced, but entered the vehicle willingly. Investigators considered this the most credible sighting in years. They began publicly asking the community to come forward with any knowledge of individuals who had owned or driven a car like that in 2000. But again, the lead didn't result in any arrests or charges. Technology couldn't catch up. Part of the challenge investigators faced was the timing of the case. Asha's disappearance occurred just before the explosion of digital footprints, before smartphones, security cameras on every home, and GPS tracking. In 2000, very few homes had digital surveillance, and Asha had no internet presence. There were no cell phone pings to track, no text messages to analyze. It was an old-fashioned case in a modernizing world. Even as DNA analysis improved, there was little usable biological evidence left from the scene. The home had not been treated as a crime scene in the first few hours. Family and friends had walked through it trying to help. The shed where her candy wrappers were found had no clear fingerprints, and the backpack, though deeply suspicious, had been exposed to the elements for over a year. The unyielding weight of hope. For Asha's parents, the most painful part wasn't the silence, it was the uncertainty. They never received a ransom note. No one ever claimed responsibility. There were no phone calls, no letters, no photographs, just nothing. It was as though Asha had stepped into the rain and disappeared into the wind. Still, they held on. They spoke to media whenever asked. They sat across from detectives and retold the story dozens of times. They kept Asha's room intact. They made sure her case was never forgotten. In 2020, on the 20th anniversary of Asha's disappearance, the FBI released a new age-progressed image of her, what she might look like at age 29. It was a sobering moment, not just for the family, but for the entire community. The shy 9-year-old girl with ponytails and basketball dreams had now been missing longer than she had been alive. But to Harold and Aquila, it wasn't just about marking time. It was about believing that answers were still possible. "We're not going to stop looking," Aquila said in an interview. "We're not going to stop believing." In the next section, we reach the turning point in this decades-long mystery: the 2024-2025 breakthroughs. FBI raids, a green car, a potential confession. After 25 years of silence, the investigation finally erupts with movement, and the spotlight turns to one family name. For more than 2 decades, the disappearance of Asha Degree haunted her hometown, frustrated investigators, and left her parents searching for answers that never came. But beginning in late 2024, something changed. After years of near silence, the case erupted back into the headlines with a series of shocking developments that suggested, finally, that the truth might be within reach. September 2024. A green car and a raid. The break began with an FBI raid on a property in Cleveland County, North Carolina, just outside the Shelby area where Asha disappeared. The property, long believed to be unconnected to the case, belonged to members of the Dedmon family, a name that had not appeared in public reporting on the investigation until now. The raid followed a series of sealed warrants and quietly gathered surveillance. It wasn't just a search. FBI agents towed away an old, green AMC Rambler, a vehicle resembling the one described in a 2015 tip, a green car seen by a witness on the morning Asha disappeared, possibly the one she had been seen getting into. This was not a small procedural check. It was the most concrete law enforcement movement in the case in decades. The search warrants were eventually unsealed, revealing critical new information. Among the most disturbing revelations, authorities now believed that Asha Degree had likely been the victim of a homicide and that her remains had been concealed following her disappearance. Investigators confirmed that they were looking for biological evidence in the car and on the property. Items were seized, interviews were conducted, and slowly the focus of the investigation began to narrow, not on a mystery person, but on a known family. February 2025, a potential confession. Months later, in February 2025, the case took an even darker turn. Newly unsealed warrants detailed a series of text messages exchanged among Dedmon family members after the raid. These messages reportedly showed signs of panic, coordination, and concern about what the FBI might find. But one detail stood out above the rest. A new witness came forward, telling investigators that several years prior, during a party, Lizzie Dedmon, now married, known as Lizzie Foster, had become intoxicated and made a disturbing statement. According to this witness, Lizzie confessed, "I killed Asha Degree." The individual reporting the confession had sat on the information for years. But after news of the raid, they felt compelled to speak up. The statement was detailed in sworn affidavits and corroborated in part by others who remembered parts of the event. Investigators considered this the first potential confession ever received in the case, one that could connect an individual to both motive and means. The Dedmon family, through their attorney, issued a strong public denial. They claimed Lizzie had never owned a green car in 2000, had no connection to Asha, and that the confession, if it happened at all, was either misunderstood or fabricated. But the damage was done. Public scrutiny fell heavily on the family. April to July 2025. The search widens. Law enforcement doubled down on their efforts. In April 2025, a second property connected to the Dedmon family, this time in Rutherford County, just west of Shelby, was searched. Again, ground-penetrating radar and cadaver dogs were deployed. The area was sealed off for days, While no human remains were confirmed, investigators took soil samples and removed potential evidence for lab analysis. The reward fund was increased from $25,000 to $75,000, signaling that authorities believed they were closer than ever. The FBI released a statement confirming that the case was now active at a federal level and that they were pursuing new leads with renewed intensity. They urged anyone with information to come forward, no matter how insignificant it seemed. In late June, another tip surfaced, this one pointing to an old acquaintance of Lizzie Dedmon, claiming she had confided regret and fear about being involved in something when she was younger. Investigators have not confirmed or denied whether this tip was credible, but it fit the emerging narrative, that this may have been a case of a young girl targeted or groomed by someone she knew, and that multiple people had kept a terrible secret for over 2 decades. Media attention reignites. News outlets across the country began covering the case again. True crime podcasts, YouTube channels, and national papers all picked up the story. For many viewers and readers, this was the first time they had heard the name Asha Degree in years. What made this resurgence different was that the new evidence wasn't speculative. It was official. These were not online theories. These were FBI raids, search warrants, forensic investigations, and potential confessions. The case had gone from frozen to boiling in a matter of months. The Dedmon family's response. As public interest intensified, the Dedmon family hired legal representation and began pushing back. Through their spokesperson, they stated, "Our family had nothing to do with the disappearance of Asha Degree. We did not own a green Rambler at the time. These rumors are hurtful and unfounded. We are cooperating fully with investigators." But questions remained. Why was their car towed? Why were multiple properties searched? Why had someone waited until 2025 to report a confession? And if the family was innocent, why did the FBI list their vehicle as consistent with a vehicle of interest in the disappearance of Asha Degree in their unsealed warrants? Where the case stands now. As of mid-2025, no arrests have been made, but the investigation is still open and active. The FBI and Cleveland County Sheriff's Office have both stated that the case is ongoing with significant leads under review. Analysts believe that charges could come at any time, depending on the outcome of forensic analysis and further cooperation from witnesses. What began as one of the quietest cold cases in the country is now under a national spotlight, with pressure building on every side. For Asha's family, the developments have been both hopeful and painful. For years, they lived in silence. Now that silence has been broken. But the uncertainty remains. In the final section, we'll close with what these breakthroughs mean for the investigation, how viewers can help, and why, despite the years, this case may finally be nearing its resolution. As of today, Asha Degree remains missing. 25 years after she walked out of her family's home into a dark, stormy morning, the world still doesn't know where she went, why she left, or who might have met her along the way. What we do know is that someone, perhaps multiple people, have carried a secret for a quarter of a century, and now, that secret may finally be unraveling. The recent breakthroughs, the FBI raid, the green AMC Rambler, the alleged confession, have shifted this case from a haunting cold case to one on the edge of resolution. But for Asha's family, there are still no concrete answers. There has been no arrest, no body, no definitive conclusion. The absence of those things is part of what continues to make this story so painful and so important. What these developments mean. The 2024-2025 developments just suggest movement. They signal a significant change in the case's trajectory. The FBI doesn't mobilize lightly. The search warrants, interviews, and material seizures indicate that law enforcement now has a working theory, supported by physical leads and eyewitness testimony. Investigators now believe that Asha was likely taken by someone familiar with her route or routine. the seizure of the Green Rambler is more than symbolic. It connects back to a 2015 tip and ties a real object to a real moment in the timeline. Add to that a claimed confession from a known individual, and the case becomes less about mystery and more about timing, how soon a prosecution can be built. Still, the absence of charges leaves a fragile sense of progress. For families in cold cases, near closure can be as emotionally complicated as silence. The family holds on. Through all of this, Asha's family has remained remarkably composed. They've navigated every phase of the investigation with grace, when it was ignored, when it was revived, and now as it teeters on the edge of clarity. Her mother, AMC Degree, continues to speak out, thanking the public for their support and asking for patience as the legal process moves forward. "We've waited 25 years, she said in a recent interview. "We can wait a little longer if it means we get the truth." Harold Degree, Asha's father, has expressed cautious hope. He's been careful not to label recent leads as answers, but has acknowledged that the family now feels closer to resolution than they ever have before. Why this case still matters. Asha Degree's story represents something bigger than one missing child. It's a reminder that justice delayed is not always justice denied, and that community pressure, family persistence, and law enforcement coordination can bring movement even decades later. It also challenges assumptions. Asha didn't come from an at-risk home. She wasn't neglected or abused. Her disappearance wasn't caused by poor parenting or dangerous habits. She was protected, loved, and stable. And yet, she vanished. That's what makes this story resonate. It proves that any child, anywhere, can become the victim of something they never saw coming, and that those responsible can hide in plain sight for years, even decades. How you can help. This case remains active. The FBI and Cleveland County Sheriff's Office are still encouraging the public to come forward. Even with everything uncovered so far, it's likely that more people know what happened and have simply never come forward. If you have any information, no matter how insignificant it may seem, please contact Cleveland County Sheriff's Office, 704-484-4788 FBI Tip Line. 1-800-CALL-FBI or visit tipsfbi.gov. Tips can be submitted anonymously. And with the current reward set at $75,000, there is both moral and financial incentive for anyone with information to speak up. A final thought. It's been more than 9,000 days since Asha Degree walked out of her home. Since then, her parents have kept her memory alive, not just through interviews and press conferences, but through action. They've held walks. They've pushed for national missing persons databases. They've built a legacy around the belief that their daughter still matters, and always will. Asha would be 34 years old today. What she could have become remains unknown. But what she represents is undeniable, a mystery that never should have happened, and a community that refuses to let it be forgotten. The story isn't over yet, and if justice is coming, it will be because people like you kept caring.